Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Some movie theaters serve the communities around them. Others symbolize the community itself. The Tivoli was one of those.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
How do I know? There's no sickness.
Through depression and war, boom times and bust, the Tivoli stood proud.
Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
In the glory days of Washington's movie palaces, it was one of the grandest of them all. One observer called the Tivoli a Venetian palazzo, a Moorish harem, and a Beaux-Arts estate rolled into one.
Listen to them. Children of the night.
But hard times fell on the Tivoli, and for 2 decades it stood empty and decaying. Until a community, a city, and a developer with a vision came together to bring the building new life. The Tivoli Theater opened on April 5th, 1924, to great fanfare. 2,500 people attended the opening gala. The debut film was Painted People, with Hollywood flapper Colleen Moore. But there was more than just a movie. A jazz orchestra, Fred Waring's Pennsylvanians, provided live musical entertainment. There was even a ballet performance on the Tivoli stage. The Tivoli's opening was such an auspicious event, the Washington Post devoted the entire front page to it. The newspaper called the Tivoli a magnificent addition to the real showplaces of the District of Columbia.
It had such wonderful glamour and panache about it, and drew all the people of the community through its doors.
It gave you a sense of grandeur and spaciousness, and something you just don't get in today's theaters.
The Tivoli was built by a local motion picture exhibitor named Harry Crandall. Crandall owned some of the biggest and most lavish movie houses in Washington. But the Tivoli was his crowning achievement.
He thought big. He wanted to have them all. He wanted to build movie theaters everywhere in the city.
Crandall envisioned the Tivoli as a temple of the arts, where ordinary citizens could be entertained in royal style. He commissioned renowned architect Thomas Lamb to design the theater. And Lamb gave Crandall exactly what he wanted: a movie palace that would make a statement by its very presence, where, for as little as a quarter, the average resident of Columbia Heights could enter a world far removed from workaday life.
Imagine this theater when it opened up, and the people living in this neighborhood walking into the lobby lined with marble. It has gold leaf decorations. They could come in here and walk up a stairway that a king or queen might walk up.
The Tivoli would easily catch the eyes of passers-by on 14th Street. Everything was designed as if to announce the Tivoli may be located in an everyday neighborhood, but this is no ordinary place. Inside, the 2,500-seat theater had a distinctive dome with a crystal chandelier. There was a working stage and a double proscenium arch. Ornate plasterwork graced the public areas of the theater, and gilding and gold leaf abounded. In fact, architect Thomas Lamb said it was impossible to use too much gold in this theater. The Tivoli opened at the zenith of the silent film era.
I was brought here in the late 20s with my grandmother to see the Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney. Quite an exciting, scary movie. However, I remember it very well.
When talking pictures took the nation's movie theaters by storm, the Tivoli was outfitted with not one, but two of the first motion picture sound systems. And in October 1928, the first talking picture, The Jazz Singer, played at the Tivoli.
Goodbye, Tootsie. Goodbye.
As the Tivoli celebrated each new year in business, it became one of the city's major neighborhood movie houses for A-list Hollywood films.
I first started going with my mother, and my mother adored musicals. So I can certainly remember seeing the Esther Williams movies with her. I certainly remember seeing the Dracula movies. I remember seeing Frankenstein. I remember seeing Hunchback of Notre Dame.
On Saturdays at the Tivoli, there were serials for the kids, like Hopalong Cassidy.
I don't like to see human beings getting tramped by a horse.
And Flash Gordon.
It was great. All the kids from the neighborhood, from our school, we'd meet on Saturdays up here. We'd line up around the block.
Saturday afternoon was really put aside for going to the Tivoli, going to the movies, with the cartoons, with the serials. You could make an entire afternoon of it.
As the Tivoli provided entertainment for countless Columbia Heights residents, it helped transform the neighborhood itself by stimulating economic development. Anchored by the Tivoli, Columbia Heights soon became the second largest retail district in Washington.
The Tivoli really put Columbia Heights on the map because of its unique characteristics, its spaciousness, and it really gave it a special place in the fabric of the neighborhood.
The Tivoli building was more than just a theater. Small shops occupied storefronts on the first floor, with office spaces above. During World War II, Washington, D.C. became an important wartime capital. On the home front, women filled jobs normally reserved for men. In the early 1940s, the Tivoli got its first female usher, Lola Smith. They called her an usherette.
The manager at that time wasn't thrilled about having a female usherette, so he put me in the balcony where mostly you have teenagers coming and it's dark up there and you're not in the limelight, so to speak. But it was great, it really was.
When I'm done, best I can.
The Tivoli reflected the society around it, for better and for worse. Like schools and other public facilities, theaters in Washington, D.C. were segregated. And for its first 3 decades in business, the Tivoli barred African Americans. But after schools were desegregated, the Tivoli and other movie theaters soon followed suit. By the late 1950s, Columbia Heights was a neighborhood in transition. Whites were leaving the city for the suburbs, and with housing covenants lifted, African Americans were moving in from the Shore and U Street neighborhoods. By the mid-1960s, Columbia Heights was a predominantly black neighborhood. Once again, the Tivoli changed with the times, becoming a centerpiece of the African American community.
I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted.
In 1963, the same year Dr. Martin Luther King led his historic March on Washington, the NAACP and other civil rights groups held a fundraiser at the Tivoli, centered around the screening of a feature film, Lilies of the Field.
I mean, I ain't no none. I'm nobody you can boss around. See?
The star of the film, Sidney Poitier, made a personal appearance at the theater in solidarity with the civil rights groups. Racial tensions reached a boiling point in 1968. Riots broke out in Washington following the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. storefronts along 14th Street were burned and vandalized. But with devastation all around it, somehow the Tivoli was spared. Except for some graffiti, the building was unscathed. In 1965, Warner Brothers had sold the Tivoli to a regional group called District Theaters. From then on, the Tivoli catered to its mostly African-American audience, and a new generation of moviegoers discovered the theater.
Coming to the Tivoli back then was really great. 25 to 30 cents is all it cost, and you see 2 movies all day long. We used to collect bottles that we needed to get the money up to come into the movie.
But after the 1968 riots, the once thriving Columbia Heights neighborhood took a turn for the worse.
After the riots, there wasn't any more 14th Street. They started tearing down the old buildings that was burned out, and everything was lost.
With the neighborhood economy deteriorating, it was harder and harder to keep a large movie house alive and profitable. In 1976, after more than 50 years in business, the Tivoli Theater closed. For a while, the theater was used by community groups, but eventually it was abandoned and boarded up. In the late 1970s, the city began exploring plans to redevelop the Tivoli site. Under those early plans, the historic theater would have been demolished. Outraged that the Tivoli might be destroyed, residents organized a community group called Save the Tivoli.
When the riots occurred in 1968, the Tivoli survived that very momentous event. And I think that there was, in my heart of hearts, I think there was a reason for that. I think it was meant to be. Having survived that and for it to be torn down for redevelopment just didn't seem to make sense to me. It should have been part of the redevelopment effort.
Save the Tivoli was able to get the theater designated a National Historic Landmark. But the preservation battle raged for almost 2 decades, until the community, the city, and a new developer, Horning Brothers, struggled to find the common ground to move forward. Under the new plan, the Tivoli Theater would be preserved as the centerpiece of a new development featuring office space, retail space, a giant food supermarket, and brand new housing. The plan would combine historic preservation with common sense economics.
The anchor was the supermarket. Without Giant's interest, the project had made no economic sense. We then moved on to the building, and how could we make it a revenue producer? Each piece came together and fit in the puzzle.
This redevelopment project gives something to everyone. I think it's something that everybody in the neighborhood, all groups in the neighborhood can be attracted to, can use. And I think that's what makes it unique and that's what makes it exciting.
A portion of the old movie house would be restored as a performance space for the Gala Hispanic Theater Company, a long-time fixture in the Columbia Heights community.
It is very challenging, but it will, I think, be a really unique space because it will combine that modern, industrial, urban, inner-city theater with an elegant, historic landmark that is very moving for the people in this neighborhood.
But with the ambitious new plans came a challenge. 2 decades of damage from the elements and from vandalism had taken their toll. Restoring the Tivoli for adaptive reuse would be a difficult task.
But it's what we call demolition by neglect. And what happened was the roof flooded, the water got into the building and actually damaged all the plaster. And the water had been so bad that the stone in the building, the marble, had actually been dissolved by the acidity in the water. So it was quite a damaging scene, but then there was the beauty of the balance of the building, which was still very much intact.
Restoring an 80-year-old temple of the arts was a painstaking process. Specialists were brought in to make sure every detail was just right. And new spaces for office and retail were artfully designed to complement the old. When the Tivoli first opened in 1924, it helped make Columbia Heights a thriving retail and residential center. Today, Columbia Heights is changing again. New immigrants from Latin America are contributing to the community's diversity. The neighborhood is once again coming back after a long decline. Now the Tivoli is poised to lead the way for a revitalized and diverse Columbia Heights.
Looking forward, I think it will just continue to be a symbol of what the past was, but how to take the past and make it living and vibrant. This is a linchpin. It is something that people have longed for. I think it'll raise the level of the total community in terms of its attractiveness to people.
It's very exciting to see it come online. Every time I walk by the building now, I do a double take because I can't believe that, you know, after this many, many years of struggle and after times where you just wondered when anything was going to get done, that it's finally coming online.
And I am thrilled that the Tivoli is being reopened, just thrilled, because it holds so much in the way of the history of this city.
After 3 decades, the Tivoli proudly lights up 14th Street again, a reminder of a vibrant past and a beacon for a neighborhood coming back to life.